Okay, so what we have here is, this is AP Dual Credit Psych Unit 3, Lecture 10. And if this is on-level psych, it is Unit 1, Lecture 5. We're talking about stress and illness and disease. Very important, stress does not cause disease, but stress, as we mentioned before, makes us a little bit more susceptible to disease. So we're going to talk about physical illness and how it's impacted by stress, mental illness, how stress can impact it, and finally we'll talk about combating illness as well. That's what this unit will be about. What I want to do is I want to show you the psychological and the physical, more than the psychological, the physical effects of stress by taking a look at what is possibly the most stressful job in America and why everybody wants it, I don't know. But it's President of the United States. The very, very, very stressful job at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and you can sort of see it by looking at the men who have been president, and take a look at when they walked into office and when they walked out of office, and sort of see the physical change that takes place in them, the aging, if you would, of the president. So we're going to take them one by one here. Now, Donald J. Trump got elected at the age of 70. If I'm not mistaken. 70 is when he took office, or when he ran in 2016. So it's only been about 3.5 years that he's been president, a little bit more than that as of this recording. So when we take a look at the wear and tear on him, we can see a little bit. Now, again, with Trump, a little bit more difficult because he's more apt to wear heavy makeup than most, so it kind of takes in the wrinkles or so. So you can sort of see there, but you can definitely see kind of putting a little bit more weight on than he normally was known to do. And you can really see it right here where he came back from the rally in Oklahoma, and you can just sort of see that filled out chin, because again, when you stress, you're not breaking down the fats the way that you should, and just sort of the wear and tear that it's had on him over the last 3.5 years, though. When you look at other presidents, he's not as bad as some. You see Obama, excuse me, Barack Obama here, who took the oath of office at 47, which freaks me out because I'm 52. And the fact that, 5 years younger than me, and he became president of the United States in 2008, relatively young, and also a very athletic guy, would work out every morning of his presidency, would shave before he worked out. I thought that was peculiar, but that's him. And 8 years later, 2016, which is kind of what he looks like today. Hasn't really aged that much in the last 4 years as he's come out of the stress of the job, but you will see here deeper wrinkles, a lot more snow on the mountain than what he had coming into office in 2008. George W. Bush also served 8 years. So again, Trump at this point, just 4 years. Barack Obama, 8 years. So George W. Bush becomes president, was the governor of Texas prior to that, and was reelected, but he had to deal with September 11th, the war on terror and whatnot. And you see the wear and tear that happened to W over just 8 years. Billy Clinton gets elected at 92, again, relatively young. Obama goes in at 47. He went in at 46. But after, the Republican Revolution and his impeachment trial, came out a little bit worn down. Again, you see the bigger bags under the eyes right here. Of course, the hair becoming much, much more gray, wrinkled up a little bit. So Clinton got some aging going on. Herbert Walker Bush, again, this is a gentleman who was 64 when he became president, so a little bit older. Now we're back into that Trump territory of an older president, and this kind of wore on him a little bit, where he only was able to serve 4 years. But end of the Cold War and whatnot is what he went through. Reagan, who was about Trump's age, he was 69. Trump became the oldest elected president at the age of 70. I think he's running against Biden as I'm speaking right now, who's 77, and Trump is 74. So he would be, either we're going to have the oldest elected or re-elected president here in a couple of months. But Reagan was 69 when he took the oath of office. But when he left at 77 and 88, a lot of wear and tear on him. because he was an older American. And again, this is the argument against both Biden and Trump currently. It's a stressful job. Can you at that age stand up to it? And also, in retrospect, taking a look back at Reagan through hindsight, we know that Alzheimer's eventually hit Reagan a few years after this, and some people are susceptible that it was hitting in the end of his presidency. Jimmy Carter takes the oath of office at the age of 52 in 1976, comes out 4 years later, kind of looks a little better, more tan. But again, very stressful with the Middle East problems in the Ayatollah in Iran with the hostage situation there. Richard Nixon comes in at the age of 55 in 1968 and leaves after a resignation in 1974. And again, the wear and the tear, hairline about as bad, but a lot more gray you see in there, including the eyebrows and just the lines in the skin. Lyndon Johnson, we're going to see it hit him heavy. He goes in at 55 in 1963, taking over for Kennedy, but with the Vietnam War, war on poverty, and civil rights, you just kind of see that this guy looks like his uncle, looks a little bit older than just a 5-year difference there. Kennedy, we don't see much wear and tear because he was only president for about 2.5, 3 years. Dwight Eisenhower. Now, Ike had 2 heart attacks while he was president, even though he was known to delegate quite a bit at the age of 62. Did have 2 heart attacks, so he goes from 62 to 70, and you see a lot of aging going on. This guy looks like he could be that guy's dad. Harry Truman before that served 7 years as president, and you see some wear and tear there. Franklin Roosevelt. Now, we also have to keep in mind FDR was president for about 12 years and a few months. Was elected to a 4th term towards the end of World War II. Did not serve it, died 4 months into it, where Harry Truman took over. But after 12 years of the presidency, a guy who was already suffering from polio, you see, again, looks like this guy's dad. But really the one that is kind of the end all be all of stress and how stress is, how you get exposed to stress is Lincoln, who took the oath of office of president at 51 in 1860. And after 4 years and a couple of months, this is a picture of 3 days before he was assassinated. And again, look at the wear and the tear and the eyes. I mean, between the Civil War, holding the Union together, the passage of the 13th Amendment, and his wife, who should have been institutionalized for all intents and purposes, Mary Todd, had some issues. A lot of wear and tear with Abe right there. So again, when we talk about stress and we talk about disease, coronary heart disease is the #1 killer in America, #1, and it's not close. And coronary heart disease is largely stress-induced. We didn't have a lot of this back in the earlier days because people had a better diet. There wasn't as much processed food, and there was less stress. There was really a lot less stress at that particular time. You only knew what was going on with you and your neighborhood and everything else. You didn't, other people, other towns, other whatever, you didn't keep up with them. So, but today it's a leading cause of death. Half the mortality from the 10 leading causes of death are due to behavior. When you take a look at them over here: smoking, alcohol abuse, unprotected sex, ignoring doctor's order, insufficient exercise, illegal drug use, poor nutrition. That leads to earlier signs of death. Smoking for the nicotine rush and the anxiety, obesity, because your body's not breaking down the fat, high fat diet. Physical inactivity. I'm sitting in this seat rather than moving around right now to get this lecture going. High blood pressure. Which again, because of an unhealthy diet and everything else. And the reason you have high blood pressure is this: when you're eating the bad foods, you know, this is your artery. Your artery should be open all the way to here, but when you clog it up like this, you clog it up instead of, it's like if you got a hose and you've got the hose and all the water coming out, you put your thumb on the hose, so it makes the area that comes out smaller. It takes more force for the pressure to go in, and the blood comes faster and out. So we're putting, we're having this adrenaline rush. We're trying to get all this adrenaline around our body, but it's a very small, like if you like a small straw, you know, it's harder to, it takes a lot of energy to get that small straw, as opposed to a big straw like from McDonald's, and before you know it, your drink is empty. So again, all of these are just makes us more susceptible to stress. And again, it all becomes in perception. You know, when you were a kid, Christmas wasn't stressful when you were a kid. All you were doing was waiting for presents. But now as you become older, it's like you got to buy your own presents. And will the person that I get this gift for, will they like it or not? You know, Valentine's, you're a little kid, everybody got a Valentine. Now it's like, oh my God, am I going to get a Valentine? Is anyone going to ask me to homecoming? Is anyone going to ask me to prom? How are they going to ask me to prom? Is there going to be a YouTube video involved in it? And all these other things that get involved with it. We make it stressful. When again, homecoming, it's just a dance. It's just another Friday, Saturday night. But we put all of this into it and we make it much, much bigger than it is. You know, my daughter, Faith, just decided, because COVID was going on and everything else, she was supposed to get married this coming New Year's Eve. And she just decided, you know what? I'm just going to get married on Zoom and we're going to do it over the summer. And the stress level just went way down because she didn't have to worry about everybody being invited, could make it, not make it with the economy, who could afford whatever. And she could just do it. And hundreds of people showed up on Zoom and it was wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful. Not to mention, saved a lot of money. So again, what happens here, my stress level went way down. But we modify you got to modify your life. You know, type A people who are prone to heart attacks, you need to make sure you go to the gym and do all those other things, because the effect on the body of what stress does, it can make us more susceptible to depression, heartburn, and now I'm going to start to stress about my heartburn or my depression and all these other things. It just makes you more susceptible to disease. There's emotional symptoms, there's physical symptoms. Emotional, I'm irritable, I'm angry, I'm feeling nervous, a lack of interest. These are all very common things of people who are going through stress. Feeling as though you could cry, and then now I'm stressed because I'm crying and I can't get things done. I get fatigued, I can't sleep, I have a headache, upset stomach. So now I'm stressing about my illness, which is, you know, my illness, which is caused by stress. Now I'm stressing about my illness, and it just becomes this cyclical thing that goes round and round and round. That's no good for us. So again, all of these, muscle pain, tension, fatigue, headaches, digestive issues, skin breaking out, eating problems, not being able to get to sleep, all of these are symptoms of stress, and all of these contribute to a bad health, to a bad health. Again, when the zebra is chased by the lion, it has the same reaction to the GAS and everything else, but it either uses up all that stuff or it's dead. We sit in this toxic bath of the stress symptoms and the body reaction to stress, and our body's reaction to stress doing all of this to us is more threatening than any stress. Again, other disease, AIDS, when you're HIV, stress again doesn't cause it, it's a virus. But if you are stressed about it and stressed about your ability to beat it or whatever else, you're far more likely to succumb to it. Because again, you're talking about your HIV is an immunity deficiency virus, which attacks your immunity. So if my immunity is already compromised and then I'm stressing, well, it's going to make my immunity even more compromised and make you more susceptible to it. Your attitude has a lot to do with it. Stress and cancer, and again, stress doesn't cause cancer, but how I react to cancer can have a whole lot to do, whether I stress about it or not, can have a whole lot to do with, does the cancer have an impact on me that's fatal? They did a study of women, 4 groups of women that were all diagnosed with breast cancer. And they all had the same diagnosis, same type of breast cancer, same sort of survival rate and everything else. But as the women were told that they had breast cancer, their reaction, they basically charted their reaction. The reaction fell into one of 4 groups. There was the group of stoic acceptance, hopelessness, fighting spirit, or denial. So those with stoic acceptance, when they were told you have breast cancer, you got about 6 to 9 months to live, their attitude was, okay, I've got 6 to 9 months to live. What do I need to do? I need to get my house in order. I need to make sure my husband knows what to do. I got to get him all the passwords. I'd like to go to Europe. I'd like to see the Grand Canyon. So, I mean, I got cancer. I got a limited amount of time. Let's just make the most that we can with this time. And those people, again, their survival rate, not very high. You know, it was already a 90% chance, maybe an 80% chance of survival there, but more likely to succumb to it because they accepted it. They just accepted their cancer and let's just make the most of my remaining time. Then you had a group over here, and their reaction to being diagnosed with cancer was one of hopelessness, one of self-pity, one of why me? Why is this happening to me? Why do I have it? It's so unfair. I take care of myself and everything. And woe is me. I don't want to get up. Why even go to the kitchen? Why even make breakfast? I'm just going to die. And that sort of hopelessness, their survival rate became even less than those who accepted it because they're just like, I'm going to die. And they dwelled on it and everything else. It became worse and worse and worse. Then this group over here, when they were told you got cancer, you got, 6 to 9 months, their attitude was, well, what are we going to do about it? Let's fight it. Let's go. What's the medication? Because I'm not going to, tell me about the people who survive and everything else. So they took the medication. They went through the therapy and everything else. Now, these guys took medication as well, but their attitude about it was far worse. The more positive attitude, they were more likely to survive. Now, again, some still fatal, didn't make it through, but for the most part, they were more likely to get through. Now, this group is my favorite group. And I find this hilarious. And I know cancer isn't hilarious, but this group is. The reason this group is hilarious is because when they were told that you've got 6 to 9 months to live, and they were told they had cancer and it was fatal, their reaction was, no, I don't. You're wrong. I want a second opinion. I want a third opinion. I don't have cancer. I'm fine. You're wrong. And they denied that they had cancer. And since they denied that they had cancer, again, their survival rate isn't as good as the fighting spirit, but since they go, no, I don't have it, it was better than accepting it and saying you're going to die. So there's something to be said for denial, something to be said for denial when it comes to that. So other things about smoking and other diseases. PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which is largely due to stress. Again, folks, all of us have things happen to us. All of us have bad things happen to us. And when how we deal with that and our fear of it coming up again could lead to PTSD. When you think about what we ask soldiers to do, we ask them to go to a foreign land, hunt other people at the same time you're hunted, not knowing who your enemy is. It's not like the red coats would line up and you could just shoot them. You have no idea. When you go to Vietnam, is he Viet Minh? Is he Viet Cong? I don't know. This guy who's walking up to me with a backpack, is that a terrorist? I don't know. So any explosion could happen at any time. So we ask these people to go off and do that. And then what's going to happen is a little bit of a trigger, when you were running a convoy in Afghanistan and suddenly you're stuck on 290 traffic and you get those same feelings coming back. And it's going to take you back to that anxiety, and that stress is just going to come roaring back at you. Right now, as we're speaking here on August 24th, there's 2 hurricanes in the Gulf that are playing the roulette. And I'm not that stressed about it because I think we live a little bit far from the coast. And Hurricane Harvey, which happened a few years ago, didn't really affect me that much personally. I didn't lose anything. But if you're someone that Hurricane Harvey was a big deal and you were displaced from your home or picked up on a boat or whatever, that's going to start to bring some paranoia. That news, that looking in the Gulf, your reaction to it is going to be the same. Now, the hurricane is the same to both of us, but how we think about it is different. If you've been the victim of a crime, a victim of a sexual assault or sexual harassment or anything else like that, any sort of little sign can point you back to it. And this is the trick, folks. All of us have a history. And as you get older and start to deal with other people, you start to realize they have a history too. And there's going to be times where you say something to someone that's going to trigger a memory back to a time of abuse or insecurity or whatever. And it's going to sort of take them back to that. Touching somebody on the shoulder, being called by the wrong name. If your boyfriend calls you by his ex-girlfriend's name, I mean, are you two in an argument? Because maybe you're taking him back to that PTSD of always arguing or whatever else the case may be. So the symptoms of PTSD include flashbacks, nightmares, guilt, anxiety, Because really when it comes to memories, and we'll talk about this more down the road when we get to memories, either you control the memory or the memory controls you. And a lot of times when we don't deal with stuff and we just push it down and push it down and push it down, then it's going to come out when it wants to come out, rather than go, you know what, that's a memory, it happened, it can't harm me now, and dealing with it, which is a lot of what therapy is. It's going back to your memories and going, that was a situation, but it cannot harm me now. And coming to terms with it versus I don't want to think about it, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to deal with it, you know, because you're just repressing. Some people will say compartmentalizing, but others would go, well, that's repression, and that's really not good. If you can't control when you think about the event's going to control you. It's going to show up when it wants to show up. You know, if I see a situation of a little league baseball game and I see a kid strike out, that's not going to give me PTSD of me striking out in a little league game, because I knew I was a terrible athlete. I'm good. I'm fine with that. But if I look at that, if I'm someone and that was my missed opportunity to get to the next level because I struck out and everybody was watching, it's going to make me shake, or a television show or anything else like that. So again, it could be because our amygdala is overactive. It could be because we've repressed memories. It could be because I think about that memory in an irrational way. And it could just be a medical issue where my amygdala is overactive. And sometimes you need to take a little something to calm that down. All right, so there's some stuff there on 9/11 of people who had difficulty after 9/11 and sort of adjusting and looking up in the sky for a plane or whatever else the case may be. Some other stuff there on PTSD. Again, you'll see soldiers very, very much involved in that. Women are much more susceptible to PTSD as a result of women also being more susceptible to anxiety and depression because they're pursued. They feel endangered more than men do. And so again, some other stats there if you want to take a look at them. What's also interesting and what's kind of shown up over the last few years is this idea of what's called secondary traumatic stress. And secondary traumatic stress is when we're stressing about something that's not necessarily happening to us, but it's happening in our environments. And because it's happening in our environments, we could be getting the stress from that, okay? Because we're witnessing the suffering of others. And again, if we continuously witness this, this can eventually have an impact on us in the same way that secondary smoke can. And it can lead to fatigue or burnout. And sometimes it's the shows we watch and we get too involved in it. It's not just necessarily friends that we have and we get involved in theirs, but these ideas of watching shows or what we expose ourselves to or the type of reading or whatever. You know, a lot of times with my wife, she'll want to watch certain programs at a certain time of night, and I'm like, you know what? No, because you're gonna have nightmares about that or whatever. So a lot of times we've got to look at our friends. Are our friends causing us a lot of stress? And if our friends are causing us a lot of stress and we're getting that secondary traumatic stress, sometimes we got to weed them out. And sometimes we got to make a decision. Is this person, you know, beneficial to my life? Is this relationship beneficial to my life? Because sometimes we got to make that decision for ourselves and our own health. So there's some more stuff on PTSD as well as acute stress reaction. If you want to pause or go back at the PowerPoint and read that. Now, when it comes to depression, major depressive disorder is a mood disorder where we basically feel a helplessness, like I cannot do things. I don't feel hopeful or happy about anything. And again, this will be more in Unit 8 when it's disorders and therapy. But again, a lot of depression has to do with this feeling of hopelessness, of helplessness, which can be because of stress. I can't do things. Some people have a predisposition for it. It's in your families or whatever else. We'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to adolescence and sort of the cognitive look of it. And we'll talk about it more in Unit 8 as well. But this attitude of not being able to deal with the situation. So why even try? And this learned helplessness that comes along with this. And again, women are more susceptible to depression because women tend to be more in touch with their feelings, whereas guys tend to repress this stuff a little bit more than women do. So your attitude has a lot to do with, does stress impact you? If you are an optimist and you see your glass is half full, you know, and you're thankful for having that half a glass, And you look at a bad situation as, yeah, this is bad, but I've had good times too. If you look at a situation that's stressful, okay, it's stressful at work, but my home life is good. You don't take it personal. Yeah, some of it has to do with me, but some of it has to do with other people as well. And you know what? I'm going to do what I can do about this situation. As a result of that, you have less stress because you don't let it bother you. You don't, right now, as I'm sitting here in the summer of 2020, as COVID's going around and I'm deciding when these kids come back, I'm not stressing that much because I can control what I can control. I can do what I can do. And I'm not going to know how hard or not hard it is until kids show up in my classroom, kids show up on my computer. You sort of got to do it. So to sit here and go through the stress and the stress and the stress doesn't make a lot of sense. And this is what's known as positive psychology. It's temporary, it's going to pass. When people call the COVID situation the new normal, no, it's a temporary normal. We're going to get back to a normal when this sort of all settles down. This isn't the way it's going to be. Now, it's good to be optimistic, but you could also be too optimistic, where you become a little bit delusional in your life because there are bad things. When you look at a couple of lions fighting, going, you know what, I could break up that fight because they would understand me because I'm a wonderful person, and then you're mauled. You don't want to be overtly optimistic where you're broken from reality. So you need to have a little bit of fear in there. Now on the other side, the pessimistic explanation, this is people who deal more with anxiety issues and issues of depression. Because when you deal with stress, you think, oh, it's going to last forever. It's never going to go away, which by the way is a very, very real reason why teens suffer from anxiety and depression. Because for me to say, I'll give it a couple of years to you is different than a couple of years to me because you've had fewer years on this planet. So you think, oh, it's permanent, it's going to be like this forever. And you think that this affects everyone and everyone's going to notice. It's a very big word amongst teenagers, everyone. And you just think that, oh, it's just going to get bad and it's going to get worse. And you just, I'm never going to get another chance, and there's nothing I can do about it. It's like if you're an athlete and you got injured and then you get back in the game and you go, oh, I just don't want to hurt my knee. You're more likely to get hurt. So again, our attitude has a lot to do with whether we feel these lack of depression, lack of anxiety, lack of stress, or if we just let it permeate and sort of take over. Some more stuff there on the difference between being an optimistic and a pessimist. And again, we need to have a little bit of pessimism in this, the reality part, but we need to be mostly optimistic. Control what you can control. Some other stuff there on those types of thoughts and how anger affects our brain and all these other things. Now, as we talked about last time, the more social support you have, the better your level of stress. And again, I'm not talking about the internet, I'm not talking about Facebook or whatever, because that becomes stressful. Do these people like me? But when you have true friends that are sort of around you and everything else. Study shows the survival rate of cancer patients who joined support groups was greater than those who did not join support groups. You want to be around others who have been through it. People have experienced similar lifestyles. That's why we tend to hang around people like us. A lot of black people aren't hanging around other black people because they're racist, because they want to hang out with other people that have a similar culture, a similar experience, a similar whatever. Athletes will hang around athletes, cadets around cadets, drama around drama, don't care about school, hangs around other people who don't care about school. People who take advanced level classes hang with other people who take advanced level classes. We want to hang around with people that understand what our lives are like because it gives us that sense of support. But again, they can also be, too many friends can be the source of stress as well, especially if the relationship is unhealthy. But again, going to support groups, listening to other people. I don't know what it's like to be an alcoholic. I've never had cancer. I can tell you what I read, but if you've got cancer, talk to my dad. He's had it 3 times. He's a horse. The guy's an iron horse. But I've never had an addiction. But I know about addiction, but I've never had an addiction. So sometimes you want to talk to someone who's been at the bottom of that ditch and knows the way out. It's better to have someone with that experience. And again, when you have support, people who are married are more likely to report being very happy than people who are divorced, because you have that support system. People who are separated are more likely, yellow and red, to have higher levels of depression than those who are married. Because when you're married, you have a partnership. Now, again, making sure that you're married to the right person. You know, a lot of people will go, well, the divorce rate is so high, the divorce rate's 50%, why get married? Well, that's kind of good that it's high, because that means people aren't stuck in a bad marriage. It's finding the right one. You know, yes, 50% of marriages end in divorce, but 50% of those people who get divorced, of the 50% of people who get divorced, about 85% of them get remarried. So again, as you get older and you get more control of your life, your stress level does tend to go down. Now let's look at things that can help with stress. And one thing is faith. It's religious involvement. Now again, I'm not going to sit here and tell you to become religious or anything like that. And I'm not going to tell you about my own personal beliefs, but studies have in fact shown that people that have a higher level of religious involvement tend to have lower levels of stress. And there's some reasons for this. First off, you've got a group. You're around a group of people, so there is that social support. It tends to be a very positive message from most religions. You know, you're sinning, not so much. But you know, a lot of churches, especially a lot of churches people go to today, it's you know, a band up there playing songs where everyone's dancing. And then it also encourages healthy behavior and taking care of others and doing positive things. And that tends to lead to better health in general. Now, again, you could go to a church that is very repressive and you've done bad and watch out, you've sinned and you're going to be punished forever. That could be worse. But again, study after study after study shows that people that tend to have some sort of faith, some sort of belief, some sort of religious involvement, go to an organized, structured group, tend to find themselves lower on stress levels, which is also why, you know, during the whole COVID thing, I got to go back to church, you become a little dependent on it. Aerobic exercise, getting to the gym, you know, using up all that extra adrenaline that your body is producing and everything else. And not just using it up, but building your body and building your strength so that when your body does have that physical reaction to stress, you're easier able to cope with it. So again, it's using the stuff up, it's encouraging your ability to cope, and also you lose weight, you have more strength, and so you feel better about yourself, your clothes fit a little bit better, so now I'm not stressing about that my pants don't fit. That's going to lower your level of stress as well, using up all that stuff. And again, when people are on the smartphone, the more that you use the smartphone, the higher your level of stress. And there's kind of a happy little point right here, like an hour, less than an hour to an hour a day. You know, you're checking in with people and on your websites, everything else. But people who are using their phone for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours a day, notice their anxiety, notice their depression, and how high it goes, because they're always on there, always looking at it, trying to get a reward and everything else. Whereas people who go out and exercise, people who go to religious services, people who see other people working, their stress levels, their levels of happiness, correlation with happiness is much, much higher than people who are on social media, on the internet, texting all the time, playing video games, stuff like that. They tend to be lower because they're not having that personal interaction. And even people go, well, I play a video game on the internet. Yeah, you're shooting people and saying things about their mom. You know, it's not really stress-free when you're shooting things and being shot at a lot on some of these video games. So again, the happiness that goes along with stress. Have a sense of humor. Laugh it off. You know, children laugh over 300 times a day. Adults chuckle 15 times a day. You know, just when you see a kid just laugh, I mean, one of the things I love about walking out to my car in the middle of the day is I can hear the kids at the elementary school out playing and just laughter, just running like an idiot, and they don't care. Having a good sense of humor, make fun of yourself, and it takes away the power of other people making fun of you, and it dulls their sword as well. Don't take yourself so seriously. Allow yourself to make mistakes, but laugh at yourself. Realize that what you did was stupid. Realize why it's funny, and just laugh, because laughing it releases stress. Laughter and fear are very similar reactions. If somebody jumps in, you goes, boo, you're like, because you weren't expecting it. Laughter is the same thing, because somebody said something you weren't expecting to say. You're like, you know, it's that visceral reaction that is very similar to fear. And sometimes we just gotta laugh. We just gotta laugh and get it out. The same way, sometimes we just gotta scream. We just gotta, let it out. You know, we just got to get it out of our system. Other things about laughing and levels of stress there, if you want to look at it. Last couple things here, biofeedback. Uh, check your blood pressure, check your pulse, get your annual wellness check. For the first time in 5 years, I went to the doctor last summer because I saw COVID was going on and new school was going to start again. So I needed a baseline. I needed to know what my health was, and it's pretty good. Blood pressure a little high, but overall pretty good. Um, but I needed to know that sort of going in. So get sort of a baseline. Here you are. Here's how you're feeling. Meditate. Take some time out. Relax. Unplug things. Turn your phone off. Just sort of sit there and think about nothing. And that's very hard to do. Meditation can be very, very, very hard. And we'll talk about that when we talk about hypnosis down the road. But it can just the idea of just relaxing and stop thinking about everything. Think about nothing for a while. That can help your health as well. So that wraps up stress, all right, and sort of takes us through that. So if you are AP dual credit psychology, that wraps up unit 3. And if you're on level psychology, the next thing we got is motivation before we wrap up unit 1.